our country's in the middle of some sort of weird social and relational breakdown.
Right.
And so we all know those statistics on rising mental health problems, rising suicide. Some of the ones that are jarring for me is the number of high school students who say they're persistently hopeless and despondent is up to 45%. The number of Americans who say they have no close personal friends is up by fourfold since 2000. The number of Americans who have no romantic partner is up by a third. The amount of time we spend with our friends is up by 60%. I could just go on and on.
Wow.
And so we've just become sad. And a sad country becomes a mean country. Because when you feel yourself invisible, not seen, there's nothing crueler than treating somebody with indifference, that they're not there. And they regard it as an injustice, which it is, so they want to lash out. And so the sad statistics are matched by mean statistics, and I won't reel themselves off, but hate crimes, gun violence, the polarization in our politics. My wife and I have a favorite restaurant on Central Park South named Gabriel's. And Gabriel told us a couple years ago that he has to throw people out of the restaurant on a weekly basis because they're rude.
Wow.
And that never used to happen.
Wow.
And so the sadness and the meanness can only be solved frankly, by vulnerability, by actually seeing the other person, being vulnerable and open. And it's super hard to be vulnerable at a time like this. And you will be betrayed if you're vulnerable. But in my view, it's not naive to lead with trust. It's not naive to lead with curiosity. It's the most aggressively effective way to counter the social malady all around us.
What you referred to at one point as an epidemic of loneliness, which is caused by an epidemic of blindness. And that's what you mean by not...
Yeah, I mean, if you think of the book was partly influenced by Ralph Ellison's great book, Invisible Man. And he says on the very first page of that book, when people look at me, they see everything but me. They see the stereotypes they have of me. They see my surroundings, but they don't see me. And in his case, it's because of race. But in my job as a journalist, people are constantly telling me they feel unseen. So you're from Minnesota. So when I used to go out to the Midwest, about once a day, somebody would say, "You guys think we're just flyover country." I hear that 10 times a day.
Right.
And so it's blacks feeling that whites don't see their daily experience, Republicans and Democrats looking at each other in blind incomprehension, lonely teenagers feeling nobody knows them, husband and wives in broken marriages, realizing the person who should know them the best has no clue who they are. And so I guess I'd ask you in the audience, how good are you at seeing others? And I haven't met most of you, but I can say with great confidence, you're not as good as you think you are. Right. And that there's a researcher in the University of Texas who studies how much people understand when we're talking, how much am I understanding what's going on in your head? And the average person is right about 20% of the time. Wow. And some people are pretty good, they're 55%. Some people are 0, but they think they're 100.
Right, right.
And actually, this guy's, I don't really believe this, but one of his findings is that as couples are married longer, they understand each other less well because they when they first fall in love, they form a model of who that person is.
Right, right.
And then over the years, the person changes and they haven't updated their models. And so I don't know if I quite believe that, but I do believe it's harder than you think to understand the person right in front of you.
You make a reference in the book to a practice, I believe it was at the New Year that somebody suggested, of writing out the last year from your spouse's point of view.
Yeah.
What was the last year like for your spouse, and then exchanging them.
Yeah.
I thought that was a wonderful idea.
And my wife Ann's here, she had her birthday the other day, and I wrote her a little memo about her year. Totally paid off, totally free birthday present.
You know, I'm sorry, I can't resist. You said there was a personal reason you wrote this book that you were going to tell me about later. Are you willing to share it with me?
Sure. I mean, this is my 20th time on this stage. I learned tonight, and so you guys have heard all my stories. But you know, I should open the book by saying, if you remember this movie, Fiddler on the Roof, which I hope you all do, you know how warm and huggy Jewish families can be, always dancing and so I come from the other kind of Jewish family. And so the culture in our family was think Yiddish, act British. And so it was like super stiff upper lip, reserved. And we were sort of intellectuals. My parents were New York Jewish intellectuals, I guess. And so at the dinner table, we had long conversations about the history of Victorian funerary monuments, The evolutionary roots of lactose intolerance. And then I want to become a writer, which is a bit of a solitary profession. And that's sort of encompassed my whole life. In high school, I wanted to date this woman named Bernice, and she didn't want to date me. She wanted to date some other guy. And I remember thinking, what is she thinking? I write way better than that guy. And so those were my values, but not hers. And then, so I'm living up in my head. And then when I was 18, the admissions officers at Columbia, Wesleyan, and Brown decided I should go to the University of Chicago. And that, too, is very cerebral. And so I love this line, the best saying about Chicago, it's a Baptist school where atheist professors teach Jewish students St. Thomas Aquinas. And so very cerebral. And I fit right in. I was a double major at Chicago in history and celibacy while I was there.
I can see the one-man show coming. It's very good.
But so I was sort of aloof and reserved. And so there's one episode that symbolizes to me that style of life, which was, I love baseball. I've been to 1 million games. I'm a big Mets fan. Feel sorry for me now. But I've never caught a foul ball. And so I'm at a game, and the batter loses control of his bat. It flies in the air and lands in my lap. Wow. And getting a bat is 1,000 times better than getting a ball. And so any normal human being would be jumping up and down, waving his trophy, high-fiving, hugging everybody, getting on the Jumbotron. I took the bat, put it on the floor, and I just stared straight ahead. I had the emotional reaction of a head of lettuce. And I look back on that guy, and I think, show a little joy. And so that was someone who was not too conversant in his own emotions. And that's when Oscar entered my life. So I tell this story in the book. I get invited to go on a panel discussion at the Public Theater. And I'm on a lot of panel discussions, usually in Washington, on the fascinating subject of like budget reform and fiscal policy going into the 21st century. I get to the public, and we're backstage, and there's all these theater people all around, and before the panel, we do a big group hug, and then they're all cheering each other's on, and there's a famous actress, Anne Hathaway, is on the panel, and a great clown named Bill Irwin. Yeah. And we're and then we all charge out, and Anne sings a song, and there's tissues on the table in case we start crying, and then people start emoting, and they're sharing their feelings, and I joke that I actually started emoting, and as Samuel Johnson would have said, it was like watching a walrus try to figure skate. It was impressive. Not good, but you were impressed you were seeing it at all.
Exactly.
And then we get done, and we have another group hug, and we all charge off the stage. And I thought, I got to spend more time with theater people. And so I think that was my emotional glasnost, and I've been crying ever since, thanks to you.